friends. This is one of the last in the series of videos we had for the Embrace South Asia. This is the last subtopic, peace and cooperation. The crux of the whole subtopic is whether there is only conflict in the area or in the region, or is there any cooperation among the SAARC countries. So maybe this question is quite irrelevant right now. The reason being, you can just see how South Asian countries they are trying to fight this uh, viral or this threat of coronavirus together, and they are sharing information and trying to lock down the border so that it does not transfer from one South Asian nation to another. So still, we need to see some incidents, or we need to see some examples why it's not only an area of conflicts but also kind of cooperation. The thing is, we already discussed SAARC is seen as, or South Asia is seen as a region without regionalism. Isn't it? It's like one of the most disintegrated region, and hardly uh, like 9% of world's trade happens from these countries, South Asian countries, even though I think they are around more than 30% of the world's population, quite a big number, and again, very huge area. And I think Asia is the biggest continent also. Still, being most populous and having such a huge area, the amount of trade they are doing together is very low. Before we go into this details of South Asian Association for Regional Cooperation, we will just discuss before I take you to the other slide, that is this slide. This some facts are here that may be asked in your one marker. So I will explain to you this for sure. And as I already told you, this is the last topic for the chapter, and we are talking about peace and cooperation in South Asia. And the platform is provided by South Asian Association for Regional Cooperation, and the year of foundation is given over here, 1985. Though they started the preparation from 1970s onwards, because many countries they started having trade relation with each other since then, and they thought of why not formalizing this association into SAARC. So the idea definitely came from President Ziaur Rehman, Bangladesh, and even Lal Bahadur Shastri, our Prime Minister, played um, a very major role during that time, as I told you, 1970s and so on. And headquarters is in Kathmandu. That means the secretariat. It's in Kathmandu, Nepal. And what I was trying to tell you before that, is there a need for SAARC, South Asian Association for Regional Cooperation? I answered you like according to the current scenario, but what they say, when there is United Nations, when there is a BIMSTEC, and there is SCO, so many organizations are there. What is the use of SAARC? Do we really need SAARC or not? South Asian Association for Regional Cooperation. So one of the reasons why India, Nepal, and Bangladesh thought there has to be a South Asian organization, the reason was very obvious. First of all, to reduce the Western influence in South Asia. This I was just following one video. Nicely, it is explained, and some study. I study something that video, and nicely he explained like how India tried to reduce the Western influence in South Asia, especially after this 1971 war between India and Pakistan, where USA tried to help, USA and UK tried to help Pakistan, and USSR was playing a very important role, and that is the reason we warded off the threat from USA. What I mean to say, even though it was a regional conflict, but USA sent its uh, missile carrying ships and all, even USSR did the same thing. Uh, so somehow South Asian nations were losing control of their own region. So this is one of the reasons why there is a need, or there was a need for SAARC. Another reason, when I was seeing that video, researching on this point, is that after India's nuclear detonation in 1974, Western countries were quick to bring in this NSG, Nuclear Suppliers Group, that stopped other countries who have not acquired this nuclear technology, to stop them from even having nuclear test, or even exporting the nuclear materials that is needed for development of whether it is for peaceful purpose or for any other purpose, but they did not wanted it to go away from the peripheral control of this five permanent nations. So India was the first country out of this after these five permanent nations to have a nuclear test. That is in 1974 in Pokhran, that we discussed, if you remember. So that was the speed reflected by the Western countries to bring in Nuclear Suppliers Group (NSG). That treaty was signed, and it is well connected to NPT, Non-Proliferation Treaty, that India never signed because seen as a discriminated treaty. So they try to stop these countries, the newly developing countries or developed countries, to acquire or even trade of this nuclear materials to other countries. So they, in a way, that's why I told you it is attached with non-proliferation treaty. They never wanted to spread or proliferate this technology to other countries, because that will make this region, which is already, as we discussed, arc of crisis, quite sensitive and risky. That's why that is one of the reasons why they thought about having a South Asian geopolitical association, where they can actually like can somehow bring in a united front against this Western influence. So another reason was definitely the influence of China, which was increasing day by day. So China, we had discussed a lot, and how China, through Pakistan, has tried to influence this South Asian region, and many times Pakistan had tried to get the membership of SAARC to China. When we will start discussing, there are not only eight members in SAARC, that Nepal, India, Pakistan, and so on, but there are around nine observer nations also. That includes USA, Russia, Australia, Burma, that is Myanmar, China, and so on. What I'm trying to tell over here, even ASEAN is, I think, one of the observers members over here. So they somehow wanted to connect to this South Asian region, as the whole population, as I told you, it is 1.7 billion dollars. It is quite sorry, 1.7 billion, the number. Completely my mistake. I'm not talking about the economy. I'm talking about the population over here. 1.7 billion. As far as the trade is concerned, it's hardly 20 $25 billion. So it's not very high, and so that's why so many countries are eyeing this region. That's why so many states are there, whether it is USA, Russia, Australia, and so on, because they do not want to ignore this region. So I'm just trying to tell you why there is a need for South Asian Association for Regional Cooperation, and how it is. actually seen by other nations. So they feel it's a kind of a welcoming initiative. It's a welcome initiative from these countries to bring kind of a united front. But the thing is, it is not working as it was planned. And the other reason um, was the Soviet occupation of Afghanistan in 1979. So, though it was a Cold War and it was between Soviet Union and USA, how they occupied Afghanistan just for their own interest, isn't it? Cold War interest, whatever proxy wars they were fighting around the world. So they thought, in order to strengthen this region, they need to make kind of um, a block over here, which can again ward off the influence of Western countries. So these are some of the reasons why they thought there is a need for SAARC. Again, if I confused you in like any point of time, let me just repeat that. As I told you, first of all, to reduce Western influence in South Asia and a definite detonation of nuclear weapon by India 1974 and the reaction of Western countries in forming NSG, Nuclear Suppliers Group. You know that. I hope in one of the classes we discussed this NSG, if you remember. This is like was made in 1975. 1975. So, and somehow they were discriminating against this newly developing countries. So obviously they needed to have a block, as I already told you. And we discussed about how influence of China was impacting this region, and it had its eye on Indian Ocean and so on. So they again wanted to have a South Asian association, and as I told you, it was mainly majorly the initiative of President Ziaur Rehman of Bangladesh and also of Lal Bahadur Shastri, Indian Prime Minister at that time, 1970s. I mean to say, not the year of foundation. I'm just talking about the foundation laid by these leaders, whether it is Shastri or Ziaur Rehman. And one another reason that we discussed about was Soviet occupation of Afghanistan in 1979. So that showed how Cold War is affecting or impacting this region. So they needed uh, again this political and economic bloc. As I used the phrase before, they needed this geopolitical initiative on this region. So just I hope, as I think I have given enough time for you to note down these points, which can be asked in one markers. So it was the initiative of President Ziaur Rehman, Bangladesh, headquarters Kathmandu, Nepal, year of foundation 1985. So this takes us to the first slide. Rather, second, first was only the factual information given to you. As I told you, these are the countries: Bangladesh, Bhutan, India, Maldives, Nepal, Pakistan, and Sri Lanka. They were the kind of original members, and I also took the name of Afghanistan. So Afghanistan, if you know, we were discussing in this end of sorry before end of bipolarity, that is Cold War. How Soviet Union tried to influence this area because it somehow falls in Central Asia, and joining or giving membership to Afghanistan was kind of an identity crisis to this South Asian association, isn't it? Because it will lose its identity. The name itself says it's a South Asian kind of conglomerate where South Asian countries will be given membership. But soon there was a talk about to join Afghanistan. As I told you, one of the reasons they formed SAARC was the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan in 1979. So from that point onwards, they started having this discussion and debate among these leaders because they started having trade much before that. Historically, you know that, and even culturally, we discussed a lot how they have interacted in the past. So Afghanistan, which is a Central Asian nation, it joined in 2007, and India was one of the sponsors of Afghanistan. Afghanistan has been very close to India from the very beginning, isn't it? So, and India needs Afghanistan as a buffer for Pakistan. So these are the countries you can note down some important point. One of the question that I saw, like asked, I think around 3 or 4 times, the year when it was formed, 1985. Now CBSE's instruction says we should not be asking this years and all, because again, as I discussed before with you in the classroom setting, like supposed to ask any lower domain questions, like which is only about remembering and administering, like in the examination. So they may not ask, but this, I don't think it's one of the dates, and it is a South Asian association. So they may ask because it is very closer home. So 8th December 1985, you don't have to remember the date, maybe at least year. And as I keep on telling you, when you're writing 6 marker, it's a very good impression if you're writing the date of origin, that is 8th December 1985. So I hope by now you must have noted down some important points. One of the important points could be Bangladesh, Bhutan, India, Maldives, Nepal, Pakistan, and Sri Lanka were the first states to join, then Afghanistan in 2007. We go for the next slide. Not much is covered over here, and I don't think there is any need for going deep into SAARC. And the reason SAARC was formed, we already discussed about that, though it is not given in your book. And it is very obvious it provides a platform, isn't it? Because most of the poor countries of the world is in South Asia. Most of the poor population is in South Asia. We were talking about 1.7 billion, isn't it? It's quite a huge number. And that is why they needed kind of a platform for themselves to grow, and they wanted to ward off this Western influence. And they needed a platform also for this kind of scientific agriculture cooperation, which was provided by SAARC. So these are one of the like aims and objectives that is very much given even in SAARC formal portal. So if you want, you can even visit that. All the objectives are given very nicely, like on a bulleted format. If you want, you can uh, even refer that. So these are the reason they wanted to improve the quality of life, because you know that health structure is a big disaster in South Asia, and you can see what is happening during this coronavirus outbreak. So that is why they needed to cooperate and welfare of the people. You know that most of the countries being poor, they are very kind of somehow they have framed their own version of DPSP that we have discussed so many times in the class. I'm not saying all the countries, 8 countries, they are calling it DPSP, but they do have their own versions in their constitution, because they needed to uplift this poor people. And poverty alleviation is one of the biggest programs of any government that is in place in all these 8 countries. Bangladesh has done a very good job. Again, if you go back to the initiatives taken by Khalida Zia and Sheikh Hasina, they have done a very good work as far as women empowerment is concerned. So, anyhow, this is the things you can note down. SAFTA, again, we mentioned when we were talking about NAFTA, North American Free Trade Agreement. This is one of the economic common economic platform provided by SAARC. They wanted to have a free trade area in South Asia, and still it is not being effective as it is written. They wanted to have zero custom duty in South Asian inter trade, but I think it's not still. Forget about 0 percentage. Even they have not reached this the benchmark that they have given to themselves. That is 20%. Even that is not there among most of the members. And even when Narendra Modi came to power, he thought when we are having bilateral treaties with Nepal, Bangladesh, and definitely Maldives, so what's the use of having, even with Sri Lanka, India is having bilateral treaty. I think even in trilateral treaty, there is India, Bangladesh, and Sri Lanka in one of the trilateral treaties. So they thought, why we need to have a SAARC? So somehow leaders, even they are losing kind of their interest. If you remember, after Uri attack, um, India did not even attend that SAARC summit meeting. So that shows India being one of the original members. Even it has started showing that kind of disinterestedness in being involved or uh, being an active member of SAARC because they think maybe it's a failure. Forget about reaching 20%. Still, a lot of duties are imposed. And only one positive thing about SAARC is that they do have this visa facilities like for diplomats and all, like from Afghanistan, Bangladesh, and so on. If they need to move from one South Asian nation to another one, they do not have to apply. It is almost equal to the Shenzhen passport that we discussed. But I just can't compare with Shenzhen for sure, isn't it? It is giving them a passport and that they can use it for the whole life, but for all the citizens of European Union. But here I'm talking about kind of a temporary. It's only for 1 year. I think the validity of this visa that is provided by all these 8 countries is 1 year. That is provided only for a few officials, like and some businessmen who needs to travel like across South Asia. So they do not have to go for multiple application of this visa. So uh, this is one of the achievements, if I can talk about. And what we're discussing about was South Asian Free Trade Area. They have tried to reach that NAFTA benchmark, but it is not possible. North American Free Trade Agreement, you know that it is completely duty free. They can export and import among each other, and their trade is much more kind of a huge like number compared to South Asia. South Asia has been a big failure as far as inter and intra trade is concerned. Many things that they can import and export among each other, but still they are kind of circumventing this region, and they are trade with European Union and USA individually rather than as a united bloc, as we discussed. That was the whole objective. So most of the countries, they are agriculture countries. If you see the names, definitely not Afghanistan, Bangladesh, even Afghanistan, they are growing dry fruits and all. What I'm trying to tell, like basic agriculture product that is in Bangladesh, India, Pakistan, and so on. That's why they do have cooperation in agriculture field that is under SAFTA also. But the problem is most of the countries have kind of built these walls or trade walls. They have some sensitive products that cannot be imported from other countries. And the list is very high. Some countries are having around 170 items that their government has actually passed the law in their parliament. They are not supposed to import from any of these South Asian countries because that will threaten their own native industry. That's why it is not a kind of a I cannot call it as free flow trade agreement like NAFTA. That's why South Asian Free Trade Agreement still they have to break many bottlenecks to reach that level. How it goes, as far as trade is concerned, first they will have custom union, then they will have a common market like European Union is having now. So that's how it goes. Even I think we have not reached the level of even customs union, where we are looking at our common history and culture and trying to have trade with each other. Still, it is not happening. And one of the videos when I was watching, how they can actually interact more, they can have even a religious corridor, because it was nicely explained over there how India is having most of the like Buddhist shrines. Like if you see most of the Buddhist sacred places, isn't it? So like Japan is interacting with India because of that, Bihar and so on. And Lumbini, which is in Nepal, again that provides kind of Buddhism is kind of a common, in Bhutan, if I'm not wrong, India is having some Buddhist, so and so on. So that shows they can interact through religious corridor. And Kartarpur, which has become so popular. If I ask you which country is having, I hope you will be knowing. Recently, we signed a treaty with Pakistan. Kartarpur, which was the birthplace of Guru Nanak, that's in Pakistan. So somehow we can have all these sacred religious places and we can connect them. And as all these countries, South Asian countries, give a lot of importance to religion, somehow we can have a religious bridge over here. One of the days, I think we even talked about in Nepal, Pashupatinath temple, isn't it? Because being a Hindu nation, even they are secular in tone, but I'm just letting you know Hindus are in majority. So that way, many Indians keep on visiting that area. Even Maldives are having many like Hindu shrines. So what I'm trying to tell over here, they can somehow make this kind of religious bridge between each other. And that is one of the solutions given by international thinkers. Like if they want to unite as a custom union before they go for a common market, that is not to be. I don't see any future for that. But somehow, uh, coronavirus, somehow it is giving them, I should say, a launch pad for SAARC. And they are sharing information, as I told you, and they're helping each other. So maybe that can be the future, like in a way positive for the future. So you must be thinking how quickly it has ended, because there is not much in this like sorry, this subtopic. Only you have to prove there is not only conflicts. If they ask, explain peace and cooperation in South Asia, you just need to explain to that it is not only arc of crisis, it's not only arc of conflicts, but there are platforms of cooperation between these 8 countries. And SAARC, as we discussed, it is providing that authentic platform or formal platform for them. And Ziaur Rehman, who initiated the whole process, even Lal Bahadur Shastri, you can name him. And especially after the influence of Western countries, and they were calling the shots in South Asia rather than these countries. So they wanted to have a formal platform for this, and they got it from SAARC. And we know that how India was denied membership of NSG. That is mainly because of China. Yes, I'm talking on nuclear suppliers group. China kept on vetoing India's membership NSG, which was sponsored by even Russia and so on. So that shows they needed to make an association in South Asia. Even though, as I initiated the whole topic, how this region is seen without regionalism, that means it is still not integrated. And you can even discuss, again, I do not want to keep on replicating what we have discussed already in the class, like India, how it plays a role of big brother over there. From the beginning, India like has been playing a role of big brother. And uh, if you see from 1990s onwards, this move towards SAARC became very strong. And the only fear was by that time, India has gone through this LPG, that is liberalization, and that globalization and privatization. So India being such a huge market, such a huge manufacturing unit, these countries like Afghanistan, Bangladesh, and Pakistan, they felt threatened by that. And they thought if they are having a common market where they are buying and selling to each other, possibilities there, India will supersede the trade of all these countries. So that was one of the reasons SAARC never got the push it would have got, just like European Union. If you see in European Union, most of the countries are having kind of a very good, well balanced GDP and per capita. But over here, the contrast can be very high because India's GDP can be equal to so many countries over here, like in South Asia. So they always feel kind of threatened by Indian market. So even Indian market is quite huge. They can take advantage of it. But the problem is that trust factor is still not there. And that's why India, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Nepal, I think they went for these bilateral and trilateral treaties rather than depending on this SAFTA, South Asian Free Trade Area, because still I don't see any future for them. Like even in future, you don't see like they will be so much integrated because of the intricacies within these countries and the border conflicts and so on that we discussed when we were discussing this individual nations and also this bilateral relation. You know that India and Bangladesh, India and Nepal, India and Pakistan, and so on. You must have seen how they are still having these water disputes and border disputes. So it will take a long time to become a common market like European Union. So these are the facts about SARC, and these are the questions you can note down in your book. And when you come back, I hope it will be soon. So I means I'm very positive. I don't know how many of you are really interested, but yeah, the thing is, when we come back, I mean to say, the situation or the circumstances will be very normal, and we can get back to our work, uh, classroom setting. So these are the questions you can answer in your notebook, and definitely I am going to correct because now you're having enough time. It's not like so many classes are there and so on. So you can note down this question: explain Bangladesh struggle for democracy after its creation. If I need to give it any mark over here, it will be very, very, very important as far as your exams are concerned. CBSE. Many a times they ask this question: Bangladesh struggle for democracy after its creation, isn't it? So India was the country that was instrumental in creating Bangladesh itself. So they followed democracy in a major way. I'm not saying they never had this episodes of military coups. They did have, but the only thing, because they're influenced by India more than Pakistan, army rule was or authoritarian rule was not kind of cemented over there. So all these things you can mention, and definitely the role of Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, Khalid Azia, and so on, coming to the present. The next question is explain the struggle for democracy in Nepal. Another question, I'm not saying it is asked very often, but they do ask democracy in Nepal because, as I put in the YouTube also, it's kind of a thriller. And many teachers were actually overwhelmed by reading about the whole royal story, like over here, how so many royal family members were killed and massacred. So that becomes quite interesting for many people. If you keep on reading, I think even you will be interested. And only 2 or 3 times I've seen this question coming, sometimes in 4 and sometimes 6 mark. Over here, I have taken the highest benchmark, that is 6 mark. Explain the struggle for democracy in Nepal. Then explain India's friendly relations with Bhutan and Maldives. Again, very important, Bhutan and Maldives. Many times they've asked because Bhutan is kind of India's near abroad, and now there is Chinese influence, so it becomes very important. After that, Doklam, like a standoff we had with China and Maldives. Many Indians keep on visiting that place, and because being a tourist area, and Maldives depends upon India for many basic necessities. As one of the necessities I told you, when we had onion crisis, still we were exporting to Maldives because they were depending on India. So mainly for food products, they depend on us. So all these things you can mention. And do not forget to write they are part of SAARC, isn't it? Please do not forget that. If you go back to the slide or when you start seeing the video again, this is one of the statements you can always mention how many of the countries are part of South Asian Association Regional Cooperation. So this is an obvious question, as I was even discussing about some case studies. You know, the case study they can even give about Uri attack when it happened in India, and how India refused to be a part of SAARC. Almost India boycotted, and many countries followed suit. So over here you have to mention whether SAARC is a big failure. Please do not write everything negative. There are positives. SAFTA is a positive step, even though they have not reached that benchmark of 20% or 0% excise duty, and the trade like between among them, like it has not reached the level that European Union countries are having or ASEAN is having. I think it's hardly maybe the combine is 1.3 trillion dollar. So it's not very big. I mean to say these countries are having with this South Asian region, even with the world. So that shows they're not growing with the speed as China has done or ASEAN has done or European Union has done. And this is the thing, SAFTA. So uh, even this is kind of a case study. Like, is SARC a big failure? If you see, I think in one of the boxes or somewhere, they have discussed about that. As I told you, you please do not ignore the boxes that is given in the left or the right side of your chapters, because 10% will be your case studies. So any of the incidents they can ask, and do you think that is the reason SARC is a big failure? So you need to explain SARC is a big failure because they do not see the economic interest in that, most of the countries. Unlike in ASEAN, who have forgotten their past, even they had many border disputes, as we discussed about Cambodia, Indonesia, and so on. But they have forgotten the past and they are moving towards the future, and they definitely going to have a very bright future, and they do have a bright present also. And even coronavirus they are fighting together, and not much news is coming. I'm not saying Malaysia is not affected and so on, but their medical system, how they are sharing the information among each other, that is completely unparalleled, isn't, where even European Union has failed. You can see what is happening in Italy. So that is what somehow you can mention about SARC, why it's a big failure. So at the end, you can give a very positive picture of that, because this is the only platform. You see, otherwise, each country will be influenced by different world powers, whether like Pakistan will move towards China, India may move towards USA, Bangladesh may move again towards China, and so on. So it will be completely like in tatters, this whole South Asian region. So if they really want to have a kind of a cemented united bloc, they need to work together under the SARC platform or maybe under SAFTA platform. So that concludes our chapter. And other chapter is very small international organization, and I don't think it should take much time. As promised to you before we go for vacation, still we are in vacation, but it is a kind of forced vacation. So officially, when we are supposed to go, as I told you, we I'm talking about the EC, or I'm talking about that the schedule that was given to you before we started the class. We have to complete at least minimum 6 chapters. I think we are there, and thanks a lot for your cooperation. Without your cooperation from home, it would not have been possible. So please do write these chapters. Sorry, this question. Try to answer these questions. And when I'm saying write chapters, nothing wrong in that. We already completed 5. You can start making notes, and some notes are already given to you, and some you can start making, because 6 is quite a big number, isn't it? We are having, I think, total 18 chapters. 6 is 30% of it. So please do not let your guards off or down, and start preparing for your examination. As soon as we open, we may go for your first review or whatever. I need to see the schedule. So start preparing. And as I told you, one markers are going to be quite challenging. And before I forget, like before I say wind up over here, I should not forget to show you this slide. As I told you, objective types are going to be quite challenging. Here, I'm only giving two or maybe three objective type questions, but I don't know how many of you will be able to answer all of them. So I'm just giving only a very small chunk of what is given within this chapter. There are many, many, many one markers, and as we discussed before, out of 80, 20 are going to be objective types, and now they are saying 10% should be case study. So it's going to be quite challenging. So make sure you do answer this and put it across on your notebook, that I'll be correcting as soon as we meet again. So I hope you have noted down. If you have not, you have the luxury. As I told you, technology is an enabler, and we can keep on watching this video. You don't have to wait for me to conclude or wind up. As soon as you have any doubt or you have missed out any point, you can go back to any of the slides. Thanks a lot. Be safe and enjoy this corona curfew. Thanks a lot. Have a nice day. Thank you.